You do not survive when your bomber catches fire at 20,000 feet. You do not land a B-17 Flying Fortress with half your face blown away and your co-pilot dead in the seat beside you. And you certainly do not shoot down 5 German fighters in 30 minutes when you're supposed to be the one being hunted. For 3 years of the air war over Europe, these were the rules. The B-17 was a bomber, a flying fortress designed to absorb punishment and deliver its payload. It was not a fighter. Its crew were not fighter pilots. When the Luftwaffe's FW-119s and Bf-109s came screaming in at 400 miles per hour, the bomber crews did one thing. They held formation, returned fire from their gun positions, and prayed the fighter escort arrived in time. The bomber never won the dogfight. The bomber survived if it was lucky. It limped home, it crash-landed in friendly territory, but it did not turn the tables. The Luftwaffe knew this. Their pilots had been trained on it. 3 years of combat had proven it. The Americans could build bombers faster than Germany could shoot them down. That was the nightmare keeping Hermann Göring awake at night. But individual combat, plane versus plane, the fighter always won. There was one pilot the Luftwaffe would have particularly dismissed. 23 years old, barely qualified, fresh out of training with less combat experience than most German aces had accumulated in a single month over Stalingrad. His own squadron called him baby-faced. His crew nicknamed him Junior. On February 20th, 1944, over Leipzig, Germany, 2nd Lieutenant William Robert Lawley Jr. would rewrite every single rule in the book, and the Luftwaffe would never understand how. William Robert Lawley Jr. was born in Leeds, Alabama on August 23, 1920. He was not a natural warrior. He was not a prodigy. He was a 23-year-old second lieutenant who'd earned his wings the same way thousands of other young Americans had, through sheer determination and the massive industrial training pipeline that was churning out air crews to feed the hungriest military machine the world had ever seen. By early 1944, Lawley had completed exactly 11 combat missions with the 364th Bomb Squadron, 305th Bomb Group, stationed at Chelveston, England. 11 missions. In the brutal arithmetic of the 8th Air Force, that meant he'd survived 11 chances to die. The average life expectancy of a B-17 crew over Germany was 15 missions. Lawley was threading the needle, and he knew it. But February 20th, 1944 was not a day for playing it safe. The target, Leipzig, Germany, a sprawling industrial complex 350 miles deep into the Third Reich. The mission was part of Big Week, the largest coordinated bombing offensive the Allies had ever attempted. The goal: break the Luftwaffe's fighter production capacity and bleed their pilot ranks dry before the invasion of France. The stakes could not be higher. If Big Week failed, D-Day might have to be postponed. If D-Day was postponed, tens of thousands more men would die in Italy, in the Soviet Union, and in the skies over Europe. On paper, Lawley was flying a routine mission. In reality, he was flying into the most heavily defended airspace on planet Earth. His aircraft? B-17G, serial number 4237786. No nickname painted on the nose, just a number. One of 417 bombers assigned to the mission that morning. His crew? 9 men besides himself. Bombardier, navigator, flight engineer, radio operator, 4 gunners, and his co-pilot, 2nd Lieutenant Paul Murphy, 22 years old, from Massachusetts. The pre-flight briefing had been blunt. Intelligence expected heavy fighter resistance. The Luftwaffe was throwing everything it had in defending Leipzig. losses would be significant. What they didn't say, what they never said, was that some crews would face hell itself, and a handful would face something worse. They would face a choice. At 0647 hours, Lawley's B-17 lifts off from Chelveston. The bomber is heavy, 6,000 pounds of bombs in the bay, full fuel tanks, and full ammunition loads for all 13 50 caliber machine guns. The 4 Wright Cyclone engines roar. The aircraft shudders, accelerates, and claws its way into the cold English dawn. 300 other bombers are doing the same thing. By 0730 hours, the formation is complete, a vast aerial armada stretching across miles of sky. They turn east, towards Germany, towards Leipzig, towards a firestorm that has already been lit and is waiting for them. Lawley checks his instruments. Everything is green. Murphy gives him a thumbs up from the right seat. The intercom crackles with nervous chatter from the crew, then goes silent as they cross the channel. This is the last moment of peace Second Lieutenant William Robert Lawley Jr. will experience for the next 5 hours. Because at 10:15 hours over central Germany, the Luftwaffe hits them. The first wave comes from 12 o'clock high. 6 Focke-Wulf 119s diving out of the sun at 450 miles per hour. Their 20mm cannons open up at 800 yards. Tracers arc across the sky like strings of fire. The B-17 formation tightens instinctively, close enough that the overlapping fields of fire from 50 machine guns create a wall of lead. Lawley holds his course. His hands are steady on the yoke. The formation is everything. Break formation and you die alone. The Focke-Wulf 119 scream past. One of them clips a B-17 2 positions ahead. The bomber shudders, black smoke pouring from its number 3 engine, but it holds formation. Lawley's flight engineer, Staff Sergeant Harry Mason, reports over the intercom. Fighters breaking left, coming around for another pass. They do. This time, it's 8 of them, Bf-109s, sleep, fast, deadly. They've learned not to attack head-on, where the bomber's forward guns are concentrated. Instead, they come in from 5 o'clock low, the belly, where the ball turret gunner has the hardest time tracking a fast-moving target. The ball turret gunner, Sergeant James Holt, does his best. His twin 50 calibers hammer out 3-second bursts. Spent shells rain down inside the cramped turret. One Bf-109 peels off, trailing smoke. Holt doesn't know if he hit it or if someone else did. It doesn't matter. There are 7 more. The formation is over the initial point now, the IP, the last navigational waypoint before the bomb run. From here to the target, they cannot deviate. They cannot take evasive action. They fly straight and level, no matter what hell the Luftwaffe throws at them. And the Luftwaffe knows it. At 10:22 hours, the third wave hits. 12 fighters this time, a coordinated assault from multiple angles. The sky becomes a madhouse of tracers, cannon fire, spinning aircraft, and burning metal. Lawley's bombardier, Lieutenant Frank Cabral, is hunched over his Norden bomb sight in the nose. He's trying to line up the target, a Messerschmitt factory below them. But he can't focus because 2 Bf-109s are coming straight at him, head-on, guns blazing. Cabral grabs the nose gun, fires. The recoil shakes the entire front section of the aircraft. One Bf-109 explodes, just disintegrates in mid-air, a fireball at 20,000 feet. But the second one doesn't break off. It keeps coming. 800 yards. 600 yards, 400 yards. Cabral is screaming into the intercom, but nobody can hear him over the roar of engines and gunfire. 200 yards. The Bf-109 opens up with everything it has: 20mm cannons, twin machine guns, at point-blank range. The shells punch through the B-17's nose like it's made of paper. The plexiglass windshield shatters. Metal fragments and glass shards explode through the cockpit. Lawley feels something slam him in the face with the force of a sledgehammer. His world goes white, then red, then dark at the edges. He can't see out of his right eye. He doesn't know if it's still there. Blood is pouring down his face, soaking his flight suit and pooling in his lap. Beside him, Paul Murphy jerks backward in his seat. A 20mm shell has gone through his chest. He slumps forward on the controls. The yoke goes slack. The B-17 noses over. They're diving. Lawley can't see, can't think. The pain is overwhelming.
Eisenhower's greatest fear, that German fighters would slaughter the invasion fleet, never materialized. Historians would later identify Big Week as the turning point in the air war over Europe, the mission that broke the Luftwaffe's back. And on February 20th, 1944, William Lawley had been there, flying a shot-up bomber through the heart of it, proving that courage and skill could overcome impossible odds. The bomber he'd landed at RAF Red Hill was examined by engineers. They counted 240 holes. Holes from cannon shells, machine gun rounds, and flak fragments. The aircraft had lost 40% of its hydraulic fluid and 60% of its fuel. The electrical system was barely functional. The structure had been compromised in 17 places. By all engineering calculations, it should not have been flyable. One engineer wrote in his report, "It is my professional opinion that this aircraft remained airborne solely because the pilot refused to let it fall." William Lawley spent 6 weeks in a military hospital. Surgeons worked to save his right eye. They couldn't. The damage was too severe. He would be half blind for the rest of his life. His face required reconstructive surgery, multiple procedures to repair shattered bone structure and torn tissue. While he recovered, the paperwork moved through channels, witness statements, mission reports, recommendations. On August 8, 1944, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed an order. Second Lieutenant William R. Lawley Jr. would receive the Medal of Honor. The citation reads in part, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action above and beyond the call of duty. Although wounded and suffering intensely from pain and shock, he continued to control the aircraft and lead the formation to the target. His heroism and fortitude saved the lives of others." But the citation doesn't capture what happened in that cockpit. It doesn't describe the cold, the blood, the ice forming on the controls, the moment when Lawley's vision narrowed to a tunnel and he was flying anyway. It doesn't describe the choice he made, the conscious decision to prioritize the mission and his crew over his own survival. William Robert Lawley Jr. returned to Leeds, Alabama after the war. He was 24 years old. He'd lost an eye and part of his face, and he carried shrapnel in his body that would cause him pain for the rest of his life. He never spoke much about February 20th. He attended reunions, he stayed in touch with his crew. But when people asked him about the Medal of Honor, he always said the same thing: "I was just doing my job." That's what they all say, isn't it? The heroes, the ones who faced the impossible and found a way through. Paul Murphy, the co-pilot, was 22 when he died. He was posthumously awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. His family received the medal at a ceremony in Massachusetts. His mother held it and wept. The rest of the crew, Cabral, Mason, Cassidy, Hollenbach, Holt, Worth, Stalick, Sowell, and radio operator Sergeant Joseph Bevan, all received Distinguished Flying Crosses for their actions that day. They survived the war. Most of them lived into old age. Some stayed in touch, some didn't. War does that. It throws men together in moments of intensity, then scatters them back to normal life, where they have to figure out how to be normal again. William Lawley lived until 1999. He was 78 years old. He died in Alabama, surrounded by family, in the country he'd almost died for 55 years earlier. To this day, the 305th Bomb Group Association tells his story. They show photographs of the bomber at RAF Red Hill. They read the mission reports. They explain to young people what it meant to fly into Nazi Germany in a B-17 and fight your way out again. Because that's what matters, isn't it? Not the monuments, not the medals, not even the Medal of Honor, as sacred as it is. What matters is that we remember. We remember that on February 20th, 1944, a 23-year-old pilot from Alabama proved that courage isn't about being fearless, it's about being terrified and flying anyway. We remember that 9 men placed their lives in his hands, and he brought them home. We remember that the Luftwaffe learned something that day. They learned that Americans didn't quit, even when half-blind, even when bleeding out, even when alone against impossible odds. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. Every click tells the algorithm this piece of history is worth remembering. We're dedicated to rescuing these forgotten stories from the archives. If you want to join us on this mission, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment with your city or state and tell us if someone in your family served. Thank you for ensuring that Second Lieutenant William R. Lawley Jr. and the 9 men of the 364th Bomb Squadron do not disappear into silence. They deserve to be remembered.